Hi, I'm Juliana Halpert. I'm here with my dear friend, Sean and Randolph, at his show, This Table's Too Long to Hold Hands at Gattopardo in LA, in a nice sort of temperate day, mid-August 2023.
Thank you.
And we're standing in front of the work for which this show is named.
Yes.
So Sean, I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about This Table's Too Long to Hold Hands.
Of course.
Which is a large, I believe, watercolor composition, right?
Yeah.
What other materials did you use for this piece?
This is watercolor and pen and ink, and I made the frames as well as the plaque that says, "This table's too long to hold hands." This work, as Julie said, it gets the title for the show from this work, and it's a very long table. And what I was thinking about with this work is the original title for this work was "This table's too long to hold hands comfortably," and I had done a primary sketch where the people, you want to put your hands out?
Yeah, okay, let's do this.
Our hands are kind of like, it was kind of like this, like kind of almost holding hands, and I thought that was beautifully absurd. And when I made the drawing, I made the table a little too long, and I thought it was this incredible metaphor for like how we want so bad to understand one another as people, and I believe very strongly in human connection, that's something that's most important in life. You know this because we talk about this all the time.
Yes, we do.
And I thought, what a great title for the show, that it's about human connection, but it's like about how it falls short sometimes. And so this is the kind of like metaphor that's being
And it's also like the
illustrated.
things that humans make can also actually get in the way of our own
Exactly.
desire for connection too.
Exactly.
It's like, I love that the table's wood, it's very handmade. You
Yeah.
can see the whorls in the wood that Sean has painted. So it doesn't seem like it's just some sort of abstract idea. It's a real wooden table built, and of course it is the thing preventing these two figures. Who are these figures? When you create figures and people in your works, are they based on real people, or are they just from your imagination? Are they archetypes? What's going on here?
Great question. These people in particular are based on, there's like cues, and I like use like photos to reference, but these people don't really exist in the real world. I used my mom as the model on this side, and then I just used the feature in the phone that can flip the thing to flip it to this side so that they kind of look like their body language is really similar.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool to make them kind of like matching in a way, like the shorts, they have a little bit of a different, I get really into the costumes that these people are wearing. I think of them as costumes. And they're just people, I don't know. When I got inspired to make this work from this outsider art book that I have. It's like this big encyclopedia, and it has a bunch of like, there's like people you know, like Horace Pippin or something like that, and they have like interior, like they were clearly just drawing what they had, you know, or painting what they had, and they had like had their house or their cabin or whatever. And so I was really inspired by that, and I kind of, plopped these people in there, and they're not anybody in particular.
Yeah.
They're just kind of
Two humans
features.
searching for connection.
Two humans searching for connection, exactly.
And they
could
be
be
any
your friends.
humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could be your friends.
I mean, I could spend an eternity on this one work, but maybe one more thing I want to point out is your replacement of this other drawing. Is this a Sean work that's in the work?
It's called The Specimen. This is a Sean T. Randolph work that I made when we were in grad school.
That's right.
And it's now hanging at my friend's Jenny and John's house, and I look at it every time I go over there, and it's pink, and I love pink, and I think this show is very pink, and so I thought I had to go in there, and
it matches.
It matches this landscape that the drapes, and this is actually, this is also a painting as well, not mine. This is a Nikolai Astrup painting.
I have no idea.
That I've reframed, and he's a Norwegian painter that's really incredible.
I was going to
love a
say,
lot.
it is interesting to have this very sort of romantic in a classical sense, like or classic rather, vista that's, and I guess these, with the big mountains, it's like all about this sort of sublime experience of nature grounded in the human experience or observance of it. But these people are inside on either side of it, not looking outside, just yearning for a connection with another.
Yeah.
Because all of these vistas, you usually see one sort of broken figure, one person alone in nature, but it's two people inside just trying to connect with each other.
Yeah.
It's a really funny sort of, just...
There's a duality there.
There is, and it's just, there's some kind of funny tragedy that's like, you're really doing something tragicomic, I think, too, but using other art historical references in such a clever, sort of fun, but meaningful and educated way, or informed way, rather. Yeah. Okay, so you talked about doing pre-sketches for your show, for all of your work. Yes. So maybe it'd be good if we go over to this
let's
work,
go over and
you
talk
can tell me about this. And because this is a preliminary sketch from one of the works in the show, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this is a preliminary sketch for the work that's posing it. Thanks to Alex for helping with that hang. And yeah, you can even see in this, and maybe I'll get some like zoom-ins or whatever. You can see where I decided that the grave in this shot was too big, and so I crossed it out and like made another one. And this also ended up being the cover for the zine we made for the release of the show. And yeah, I don't know. I was working from funeral for
Orlando, I think. Yeah.
It's
Orlando.
Burial. Thank you, Alex.
I really tried to commit that to memory. I don't know why I can never get that. We know this painting by Gustave Courbet, but yes, okay.
And I don't always sketch before I'm making something, but if I like need to work out an idea or want to kind of like add to it, like I knew I was kind of riffing on that.
Yeah.
And then I got to this point and I was like, oh, what's happening? Because I had this idea that, you know, a funeral can be like a big procession, but it can also be like a small intimate thing. And at the time when I made this, I was feeling pretty frantic, and so that's where this kind of like this comic strip feel comes in. You know, it's like these are two frames and that piece, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get to funeral for a fly.
We'll get to funeral for a fly.
What's going on in there.
But this is part of the process that I think is pretty interesting and important to the work. That lots of people don't see.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting gesture to show that process in the work alongside and sort of treat it as an equivalent work to the others as well. It's
totally.
Like, it becomes more about your process of thinking and working, and we get to see this as like all the product of Sean's mind. Yeah. So I love that this is here. Okay, let's move on over here.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Great.
Let's look at for some reason when I'm on camera, I just always forget names, even though I have them committed to
This is
memory.
what it's for.
All right, well, I'm going to check the plaque, actually.
Yeah, check the plaque.
Multi-purpose coffins.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm curious what you think about this piece, or what this piece makes you feel.
I mean, I'm really interested in the way that you sort of use flatness, and in this one, I think you're very unabashed about it, and it becomes like. Of course, I mean, obviously when you think of three, the depths, I sort of go to like, you know, the subconscious or the sort of super ego, id or something. It's like there's something about depth and like what lies beneath, and it's deeply psychological to me about this sort of looming. Actually, you know, I wanted to think that this whale shark is threatening, but now seeing it, he or she actually looks pretty gentle. Yeah. And
very gentle.
I would sort of originally think that these sort of unknowing coffin boaters are in peril, but maybe they're having fun. Yeah. And you don't give us a total certain answer either way, which I really like. And then here we've got this sort of not lifeless, but desert expanse without any sort of human or animal life there. Yeah. And I'm just describing it. I'm trying to work it out in my head, but the way that you segmented the action, it's like what are you trying to tell us?
I like that. statement and question about the kind of flatness
Yeah.
and the layered flatness, because in drawing you're kind of always, and I use, with my work I use drawing and painting kind of interchangeably, because they are painting, there's paint involved,
Yeah.
but the way I work is drawing, like this is a drawing primarily. And I think about how layers work in a drawing, because it's very different from how they work in a painting, right? Like painting is like think about other shows that have been here, Gabriel's show or Alex's show, and it's like all these layers, and you can see them. Like I talked to Alex about Alex Lemke's show, and his paintings are like, there's like 4 paintings under one painting.
Wow.
And so I think that the layers can happen differently in a drawing. You're kind of like, you're mark making, and you're also like situating in space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's
and
a drawing, sort of creating space out of line.
creating space out of line, and
which is
that
different.
space doesn't have to be 3-dimensional. Right?
Yeah.
And I like what you had to say about it being kind of different spaces in time, different spaces in like different moods even.
Yeah. I mean, I can't help but think of it as like, this is the sort of sunny, maybe public face of some sort of mind, and then here's the sort of actual interior that's a bit more turmoil, and then the depths in which that are really hard to sort of penetrate, but actually might be quite gentle and soft, but potentially threatening. But okay, I gotta ask, why are they swimming? Why are they boating in coffins?
Okay, well, first of all, so the kind of conception of this piece is, I was on a trip in Baja. We went swimming with whale sharks, and I was like, I'm gonna make this painting of my friend getting swallowed up like Jonah and the Whale style. And it like didn't work. It seemed like a little too cheesy or easy or something like that. And then the boating thing came from this episode of The Simpsons that I referenced in the artist's statement. And Bart loses his soul. He sells his soul to Milhouse for $5, and he is like up the creek without a paddle. Basically, he has like one oar, and he's spinning in circles. It's this, this animation of him like spinning in circles out in the middle of the ocean, and everybody else is with their soul, and the soul is rowing the other side, and Bart is just out there. And so I had this image, this idea that's kind of like of them going in circles independently of one another. It kind of mimics the the kind of miscommunication of that. This person's taking advantage of their paddle floating away, and because they're just ignoring their other paddle, they lose the other one.
Ooh,
there's some metaphor there.
Yeah.
But they're in coffins because I'm kind of obsessed with death, and I've used the coffin kind of as like a motif. And other works of mine, and it's like one of those things that kind of pops up. It's like seagulls, coffins, kind of like nautical things.
I mean, it's so fascinating to have these wooden coffins with this wooden table. So it's sort of like we're building the things that our sort of lifeless forms are going to finally rest into.
Totally.
So it's like amazing to think about the hand involved in that too. It's just, you've got something going on with these like built structures that become our demise, or our life raft, but I was trying to say lifeboat or life raft.
Yeah.
And I just love the way that you've sort of sculpted the waves into these jagged sort of peaks, just like the mountain in that piece too. It's like your way of shaping forms in space. Like you have a very select lexicon of these things that like ties in, but it looks threatening.
I like that you pointed that out. I tend to like learn something from another artist or from a way of looking or cartoons or whatever, and then I'll reuse it. Like I'll just make it, this is the way I'm gonna make waves, you know what I mean? Like, I will occasionally, if I need to make something realistic, I'll like watch a video, but in general I'm like, okay, what does a cartoon wave look like? That's all we need. It's like a symbol, you know? I'm trying to like work in symbols basically.
I see.
It's like, what does the desert look like? It looks like this, you know?
Absolutely.
And even in being in Bauhaus, like one step removed from Arizona, where I'm from.
Right.
And you kind of like get used to looking, and you're like, oh, this is a little bit different, but off, you know? I don't know. It's this kind of uncanny way of looking, just like this cactus is a symbol for the desert, you know, rocks.
Totally.
I don't know.
I mean, I love that. It's like cartoons have to have this economy of symbols and language, and it's so funny that you're doing these really large, very intricate compositions, but still have that kind of like symbol economy, and you're playing with cartoon drawing and style. Okay, let's move over to the other wall. I want to talk about this funeral.
Okay.
I mean, let's acknowledge this beautiful.
Okay, sounds
Can
great.
you just rotate around?
Yeah.
This beautiful desert landscape, which is very appropriate to what we were just talking about. But what are these guys doing?
These are kind of companion pieces. The two desert landscapes are companion pieces to the. They're just hanging out. These are the crested caracara, which is like a bird that's commonly found in Baja, and they live in Paris. And there's lots of pairings. I figured it was appropriate.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot more thickness to that, other than a lot of these pieces have like a detail where everything has a face. That's something that's.
Wow, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, like this has a little face, and that one has little faces in the rocks.
Wow.
Something. That's a tidbit.
Totally.
But, yeah.
I love also that this is just like a pretty much direct bisection too, and you're just encouraged to leave that open space. I
use a ruler.
I love it. You use a ruler.
I use a ruler, and I find out, you know, that's some photography type stuff.
It is,
like
yeah,
the
I know,
little thirds type of thing.
It is.
But I mess with that, you know.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think your use of composition is one of the most like. I mean, there's so many things that are so signature, Sean, but I've seen the way that you've gotten bolder with composition kind of evolve, and it's just. I love that you can just do a very light wash for the sky and have everything happening below here.
Yeah.
And it feels you can feel the desert quiet in this way. That's just perfect. Now I know about the face.
Now you know.
Okay, we gotta move to funeral
We're
or
gonna
fly.
move this.
Although, so
Would you like to
title of
read
this
the
work,
title?
I would
Yes.
like to read it. Thank you. You predicted that. Funeral for a fly and funeral for another fly. Can't choose which one to attend because I knew both flies, but not that well.
This is the title.
So
And it's featured on both of these plaques, and it's making Alex laugh right now.
let's talk. Again, we have death.
Yes.
And we don't have coffins, but we do have these sort of cement-looking pits. What do you call them that are so akin to the fountains?
Mimic the
They
fountains.
really mimic the fountains. And instead of nature, well, I guess this is it's a pretty barren landscape. We're gonna demo the fountains shortly.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on here
Well,
and where the idea for this came from.
when
We
I
already
was,
talked about
this
the
is kind
program.
of a later composition out of like in the time scale of making this show.
Yeah.
I was talking to Kyle Jorgensen, our dear friend, and
Shout out,
you know, we had many talks where we're just talking about art, and you know, I'll show him like what I'm working on, and I showed him trying to draw the soul out, this piece that we'll talk about in a minute. And he was like, oh man, this really reminds me of this Courbet painting. And he was trying to remember what it was. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this, or I've seen it but don't remember it.
Yeah.
And like, this is, you know, it's not a copy so much because there's a lot going on that's outside of that painting.
Mm-hmm.
But the composition is taken from that, the kind of like blocky,
Absolutely.
you know, countryside.
Yeah.
And the way that
Like
this is
stone.
moving. What was that?
He really likes stone for some reason.
Yeah.
He's all about big stone.
Big
and
stone,
The
yeah.
grayness too.
The grayness is what I was like really trying to get after, is this grayness. But yeah, I think I thought about that painting, and I really like responding to paintings that already exist and making them my own, or kind of tweaking them, or thinking about them, you know, and meditating on them really. And I was like, what could be weird about a funeral? And this one I really went for it, and I was like writing down ideas, the way I used to exist in my practice, which was like writing down ideas and then executing them, you know, like in realizing them.
Totally.
And so for this piece, I came up with this this idea, this writing that's on the sketch. That's where it came from.
Right.
And then
right.
I was like, oh, funeral for a fly and funeral for another fly. This kind of like absurd thing. We care about our pets.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know.
It's almost like the fly is incidental, but we,
Yes.
of course, we are sad about
Totally.
death, but it's more the idea of something passing than I mean, we all die, it's a fact of life, but it's just more the suggestion of death that really scares us.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I mean,
Yeah, and it's
maybe
about
we'll see
like
the
it's about like
there's a little
ceremony,
coffin.
you know, and
Ceremony,
metaphor.
I
It's
see.
like about how, yeah, I have a good friend, and she was talking about like how critical metaphor is. You know, I think we were talking about religion or something. And it's like metaphor is so important because there's things that are big concepts or big feelings
Yeah.
we can't totally connect about, but we
Yeah.
use metaphor to do this. And I think like ceremony and metaphor kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And like what a funeral means
It's all
is
symbolic.
all symbolic. Yeah. So even for a fly, it's an important gesture.
Absolutely.
Some of the tidbits that I just want to point out about this is I was thinking a lot about like symbol and metaphor and this kind of thing, and I wanted it to seem like there was a wind coming this way.
Wow,
And so
I see
everybody's
it. Yes.
hair is going
Look at
one
all
way.
that.
Because
Yeah.
I thought like, oh, what can't you paint or what can't you draw? And it's like the wind, you can't draw the wind.
Wow.
But I want it to have
Oh,
that
it's-
feeling, you know?
And it's so interesting with like everyone sort of looking this way
Yeah.
and moving this way, and then
And
you
then
have
the-
this
you get your form,
counterforce
yeah.
from nature too.
Yeah.
It's like still human battling the inevitability
Yeah.
of just sort of natural elements and death. But so I mean the title you reference I mean which I can't choose which one to attend because
Yeah.
I knew both flies. Is there a Sean analog in this painting?
There's totally.
Is this
I think it's
Sean?
kind of all
No.
Sean, but I
It's all
think
Sean.
this is me,
This is-
that's
yeah.
me. You know,
Okay.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, at the time I was feeling like maxed, you know? When I made this, I was like working on the show, I was like lots of stuff with family and friends, and I was feeling like I was running around all the time, no way to stop it.
Yeah.
And then you get in this zone where you're kind of like, why am I doing all this stuff? Like, I'm not having quality time, I'm just moving from place to place. And so I feel like this person that's just totally
Right.
bifurcated in the middle, you know?
Wow.
Like, you feel like
Absolutely.
half of a person.
And all the other figures, I mean, minus this, let's see, a priest or something.
Yes.
It seems like everyone else is very grouped and he's just not touching anyone. But I also just like that you've layered on another tragedy here,
Yeah.
in which this funeral seems much more sparsely attended.
It's
So
pretty tragic.
maybe this fly was a bit more alienated in his life.
Yes.
And it's this double tragedy that is still rather funny, but
Yeah.
ultimately sad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we gotta keep moving.
We're gonna keep moving.
Yeah, let's go over.
You have to cut.
Wait. Should we cut? Okay. Here we are. Tell us which one this is. Trying to draw the soul out.
This one is trying to draw the soul out.
There's a lot of activity in this one.
There's a lot
That
of
was a really stupid observation. I'm just stating the obvious, but this does seem like a centerpiece with this really Bruegelian tableau of
Yeah.
action on every sort of area, whereas otherwise it's a bit more, I don't know, you've got like this duality between the empty space and the human activity. But
Oh.
here it's a melee.
It's a melee. This is the melee, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, this is
What's happening here?
This is the piece that I kind of started the show with. I had this gigantic sheet of paper and had to use it, needed to use it, really wanted
That's
to
great.
use it. I mean, this is a
Ridiculous.
huge sheet of paper for people that are watching
Yeah.
this.
Uh,
This is not like all this is on paper, none of this is canvas or anything. And that provides its own kind of like technicalities when working on paper. You have to work with it flat or things run, you know.
Yeah.
There's something to it, but yeah, it's kind of a party, you know. It's like a party
It is.
of people practicing half medicine. I've never done an ear camera before, but I think there's something aesthetic about it that's really interesting, and something that is you know, you're from Vermont. It's like, there's something a little off. It's like, is this going to help me?
Yeah.
Or is this just kind of like a soothing thing?
Very folkish.
Very
too,
folkish,
like, sort
yeah.
of, yeah.
But I wanted this kind of hubbub to be about this little thing, which is kind of in direct contrast to the painting that I sent you, which is this, the painting is this painting by Bruegel about Christ carrying the cross, and Christ is kind of like this little tiny figure carrying the cross, and everything else is what is so important. Whereas here, the kind of focal point, it kind of points you to this little thing, you know?
Wow, just this tiny little object. And yet, there are so many
things going on.
I mean, look, this cat, and his or her reflection, well, that looks like Garfield. Shout out Garfield.
It does shout out Garfield. We love Garfield, the
Alex,
cat.
This is cat,
Yeah.
you know, the real Garfield.
Yeah.
And, I mean, these strangely dressed figures drinking from these pools, again, it's like water is this sort of strange mass that might signal like some kind of life force, but peril too. I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'm asking, it's just the mood of this one seems a bit different. And it's like a real infusion of kind of happiness and full, I don't know, play.
I was trying to do everything with this, you know? It's like, sometimes things are simple, like the first piece we talked about, and then other times it's just, you want to put everything into it. And this work, I really like put it all into, and was so exhausted by finishing it. And, you know, like there's so much packed in here. The landscape of Tucson is in here, like this construction site type thing that's mimicked in the table here, and the table, you know, it's like all about the table and like what happens between and on and in the table. And yeah, the more I worked on this, the more I put into it, you know, I put just so much into it as far as like their costumes go, you know, that I made this dress, you know, like it was my kind of like, this was my opus.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, even the trees, look at the penwork. I hope you can see on camera, we'll get some details, but even just the little leaves articulated in these great masses of foliage are like so unbelievably complex, and it does seem sort of like, not really labored, but it's like a major sort of investment and commitment to this work. And I feel like I can't even commit it all to my mind. Every single time I look at it, there's something new. And I'm just curious, are you working on the entire thing, or are you going piece by piece on something that's large? Because the composition just seems so perfect, but I mean, how is this?
I think it's happening like, you know, I get an idea and then I'm kind of like, this is all done in pencil first, and then once I have the people and what they're doing, it's like, where am I putting them? You know, I had a lot of context was super important, and it's like, you know, then that's when the mashup happens. It's like, oh, this is like kind of like Southern Arizona. This is like kind of like, you know, this place and that place, and I pick and choose. I want it to be, you know, not a real place. I want it to be anachronistic. I want it to be weird and funky. I want their clothes to look like, oh, maybe like someone's like a religious figure or a priest, and it's like, oh, but this person has like a clown outfit on, like, what's the deal, you know? I want it to be layered, so someone can find something in it that they identify with, and an entry point, you know?
It's amazingly universal in that way. It's both so specific to your mind and your invention, and we're clearly seeing the world through you, but at the same time, I do feel like it's such a metaphor in itself for just life and the world and human existence. And our very sort of pinkish failings to surmount death and meaninglessness or something. It's so beautiful. The tone is always so tragic, but so funny. As a human, you're also so good at skirting that line of recognizing the sort of beauty and tragedy of all of it. I don't know. I am trying to wrap up here, and I, of course, want to talk about the fountains as well. But but your project is such a meaningful one, I think. Okay, so Sean also made sculptures for this show. Not only sculptures, but actual functioning fountains that fill the space with this incredible tinkling sound. So here we are standing with leaker, bleeder, spitter, and weeper. Where did this idea come from?
Oh, I don't know.
What is happening here?
I think this idea pretty much came from you, from your fountain show, which was early Art Center days, and it was a real good community event where you invited people to make fountain, and no one was a fountain maker,
No one.
and everybody did it, and all the fountains worked. And you took these beautiful photos of them, and I thought, Alex and Chris deserve something nice in the gallery that makes beautiful sound
Yeah,
and has some presence.
totally. And I love this sort of water sound with all of this other water in the show too, but also desert. So it's like, but who are these figures? Are they based on real people? Why? What does leaker mean?
Well, Leaker was the first one that I made out of these busts. I'd never worked with clay before, and I had never made a bust before.
That is incredible.
But I originally thought of these sculptures because my niece gets nosebleeds all the time. I wanted to make this sculpture of her nosebleed niece, and that's where I got this idea of making a fountain with blood coming out of the nose, and then I decided, oh, that's kind of cruel, you know, I don't want her to be embarrassed.
Oh.
And so it just morphed into, you know, this kind of like bodily fluids. Each of them have their own kind of eccentricity. We have the bleeding, we have the leaking, we have the weeping, and we have the spitting, you know. They're also inspired by this fountain at Cranbrook in Michigan,
Yeah.
where my brother and sister-in-law met, and where they went to school.
I see.
And there was this fountain where you'd step on a stone and it would spit at you.
Wow, right at you.
And it looked just like any other kind of old classical fountain.
Wow,
So I really always liked that, and so that's kind of where this comes from.
got it.
Yeah.
What was it like working with clay for the first time?
Oh,
I can't
incredible.
believe this is your first foray. I mean, it looks like you've been doing this all your life.
It was incredible. I mean, it was such a fun and easy process, and like to go from working with drawing and then to get to like really
Yeah.
like put your fingers into something felt so good. And because of clay, you have to be really immediate with it, like because of it dries out, and especially in the desert. And so I'd make these in a few, like 6 or 7 hours, and kind of fiddle with them a little bit. And then I took them all to my friend's mom's house. Shout out Eileen Jackson. She fired all of them for me and was like really gentle with them. And yeah, it was a great experience. And I learned how to cast concrete for the bases.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just a learning process. And I was able to kind of like strut my stuff in a different way, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love seeing a wooden table like this that sort of is in the drawings too. And these figures, somehow, three-dimensionally, you're still making figures that look like your people. These are Sean figures, and it's incredible that you can translate your sort of drawing style and visual lexicon into three-dimensional space too. I mean, and the hair seems like such an important feature.
Yeah. This one's kind of like George Washington.
Yeah.
He's
nose bleeding. This
is Bleeder. I didn't know what I was doing with the hair, and someone in one of the YouTube videos, I watched a lot of YouTube videos to learn how to do this, and someone in the videos was like, oh, you don't want to make the hair look like a helmet? And I was like, oh, perfect. I want to make the hair look like a helmet. I want to do exactly what you're telling me not to do.
Wow.
And so like all the hair kind of looks a little bit like a helmet.
Yeah. I mean, it's
for that
so
reason.
physical.
Because it's like, that's like fondant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And I love how pronounced the eyes are and the eyebrow. They're so expressive.
Yeah.
Or not, some busts, it seems like they always have such neutral facial expressions. And yet yours, was kind of sad. I think it's called the Cantal Tilt and
Yeah.
the furrowed brows. They're a bit concerned, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of expression to be had on
There's
just the
so much.
eyebrows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And it just sounds so great.
Thank you.
Do you think you'll continue to make sculpture?
I would love to continue to make sculpture.
I'm
yes,
glad. I can't
yes.
wait.